History very often defines our present. Unveiling this history is a fascinating adventure. It is like travelling back in time, where the past slowly reveals its secrets, much to our delight. The monuments and historical sites throughout the world are like windows to the past. Be it the Taj Mahal, the Statue of Liberty or the Great Sphinx of Giza, each one of them brings history back to life. Mauritius is no exception to the rule. The sites and monuments present on the island give us a glimpse of the important milestones which influence the political, social, and cultural foundation of the island. The Mauritian nation is known for its unique ethnic diversity. Through those sites and monuments, the Mauritian people can take a step back in time and discover, each in their own way, their origins, and also find therein some inspiration to build the future. These sites and monuments are cherished by the locals and also very popular with the many tourists who visit the island every year. They are now preserved as national heritage. Two of them, the Apravasigat and Le Morne cultural landscape, are even listed as World Heritage by UNESCO. The World Heritage sites and monuments are selected because of their great value and contribution to the natural and cultural heritage of the world. They have a unique global significance which transcends national and temporal boundaries. In Mauritius, the Apravasigat was classified as World Heritage by UNESCO in 2006. It was built at Trou-Fanfaron in 1849 to receive the many indentured labourers coming to the island.
The place where the immigrants from India landed is at what is nowadays known as Apravasigat. At the time, it was called as the Immigration Depot or Coolie Depot. The word coolie is no longer used as it was considered to be an insult at the time. Hence the name was changed and people at the time decided that it needed a more appropriate name. So at the site there was what we call an immigration office and the depot. It was the place where the immigrants landed, where they were examined by doctors for any disease, etc. They were given new clothes and they stayed there for a maximum of 48 hours so as to explain to them their employment contract, to translate the contract, to have them sign it in front of the magistrate. And it was from there that the owners of the sugarcane estates came to take them to their various plantations.
The first indentured labourers reached Mauritius on board the ship Atlas on the 2nd of November 1834. The large ships which could not reach the shore stayed in deep waters. Canoes were then used to transport the passengers, who were then disembarked on the steps of Apravasigat. This is where the indentured labourers took the first steps in their new homeland. The era of indentured labourers began with the abolition of slavery in 1810 and coincides with the start of British colonization in Mauritius. However, up until 1834, due to a severe lack of labour, the slaves, who were then known as apprentices, continued to work as farmers and artisans to prevent a major collapse of the country's economy, especially the fast-growing sugar industry. After this transition period, in 1834, the British government selected the island of Mauritius to be the first site for what was called the Great Experiment. It consisted of recruiting indentured labourers from India to work in various sugarcane plantations around the world. The British government wanted to demonstrate the superiority of free labour over slave labour in its plantation colonies. Since India was under British rule at the time, it was the country of choice for the recruitment of indentured labourers. By overstating the benefits of these 5-year renewable contract jobs, the recruitment agents managed to convince many poor people to leave their homeland. This cheap labour came from several regions of the Indian subcontinent, namely Bihar, Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala and Mumbai, known as Bombay at the time. 8,740 Indians were also employed as soldiers on the island. However, 5% of the indentured labourers came from elsewhere, namely China, Southeast Asia, Madagascar, East Africa and the Comoros Islands. This transfer of workforce lasted until the early 20th century. Thus, from 1834 to 1910, nearly 500,000 immigrants climbed the steps of Apravasigat. This puts Mauritius at the top of the list of countries that resorted to using indentured labourers. This site is tangible evidence of the mechanism of the early settlement of Mauritius. Therefore, not only is Apravasigat of great historical importance, but it also holds a great emotional and symbolic value, as more than 70% of the ancestors of the Mauritian people set foot on the island for the first time on these very steps. At the extreme southwestern tip of Mauritius stands the majestic mountain Le Morne-Brabant. At the foot of Le Morne-Brabant, facing the sea and beautiful beach, lies a site within a peaceful garden. The main sculpture can be found in the middle. It is surrounded by various other sculptures and engraved stones. These works of art represent the different countries from which slaves were forcefully brought to Île-de-France, and also the places to which they were shipped off. The names of these countries can be found: Mozambique, Madagascar, India, China, Malaysia, Haiti, Réunion Island, France and Senegal. The initiative of erecting this monument purposefully at the foot of Le Morne-Brabant highlights the powerful significance of this site as a focal point for the commemoration of the abolition of slavery and its strong symbolism of resistance to slavery. This decision is the result of an aggressive campaign launched by UNESCO in Benin in 1994. The 23rd of August is the International Day for the remembrance of slave trade and its abolition. This day is intended to inscribe the tragedy of slave trade in the memory of all peoples. It gives us an opportunity for collective consideration of the historic causes, the methods, and the consequences of the tragedy that is slavery.
Le Morne is a very symbolic mountain which represents the resistance of the maroon slaves in Mauritius. During the period of slavery, there were many slaves who fought against their enslavement and ran away from their masters. Many slaves took to the forests and the mountains because these were the only places where the settlers would not find them. Archaeological excavations were carried out in the years 2003 and 2004, and it was then that the archaeological team discovered caves at the top of the Le Morne mountain and on its cliffs and traces of human habitation were found. It was concluded that the stories, the oral traditions that exist in the village at Le Monde, saying that Maroon slaves were established there, have a grain of truth in them, as we have now found archaeological proofs. The Mauritian government applied to UNESCO to classify this site too as a World Heritage Site, and this was done 2 years after the Apravasigat in 2008.
The International Slave Route Monument was erected at the foot of Le Morne Brabant to commemorate those slaves who jumped off the mountain, choosing death over slavery. During the slave trade years, Mauritius, then known as Île-de-France, was one of the colonies which belonged to a complex network involving different continents. It is said that hundreds of slaves who lived hidden on the mountain chose to jump off its cliffs, their feet bound, choosing freedom in death rather than face the horrors of dehumanization in the form of slavery.
Faudrait pas n'oublier, n'a pas fins était pour n'enyer. L'histoire est n'a valer, mais il a pour faire réfléchir. Tila et la lile, oh la et la la.
When visiting Le Morne, anyone who knows the dreadful tales will be deeply moved when pondering on the tragic fates of the slaves.
On a un document d'archives.
We have one document in our archives which states that when the British soldiers came to announce the abolition of slavery, there was a slave community at the top of Le Morne mountain. But when they saw the troops coming, they did not know that slavery had been abolished, and they thought that they had come to capture them. Legend has it that some threw themselves off the top of the mountain. I think it's plausible, but when the archaeological team tried to find the skeletons, none were found. But it is said, and some have seen those skulls, that the owner of the Morne estate at the time, Mr. Cambier, has kept many of those skeletons. And for this we have interviewed many inhabitants of Le Morne who worked for him. They confirm having seen those skulls. I believe there's history here that deserves that we continue researching, and that perhaps someone one day could ask this family to let us continue the research on this site. I think there's still much to be done on the Le Morne site.
Ô île Maurice, ma mère patrie, multicolore est ta nature. Ô île Maurice, mon cher pays, multicolore est ta culture. Tu es petite, certes ma docile, mais ta culture est amplement riche. Hindous, chrétiens, musulmans, bouddhistes, nous vivons tous en paix ici. Ô île Maurice, ma mère patrie, multicolore est ta nature. Ô île Maurice, mon cher pays, multicolore est ta culture. Ô île Maurice, ma mère patrie, multicolore est ta nature. Ô île Maurice, mon cher pays, multicolore est ta culture.